They've risen the ranks of their organization, but that doesn't make them the most effective communicators of the ideas that they need to share.
The fundamental nature of why people follow creators on an expressive outlet like Instagram or TikTok is because...
All right, today the brand fathers Oren and Ashwinn are back from Cannes. First topic of debate is how we say this. It is a massive advertising and marketing week in the south of France. This year, creators and influencers were out there in full force. We're going to talk about why and some of the shifts in the marketing, media, and influencer and agency landscape. We're also going to talk about some panels that we went to, what we heard people saying, what we heard people disliking, and then some of the recaps from some of the activations, as well as the talks that Oren and I gave. So we will get into it. Jordan, first off, we missed you out there.
Yeah, but Jordan's
Guys,
in Missouri, so I feel like he was doing just fine.
you know, I would take my trip to Big Cedar Lodge and the whole fam. I got a lot of golf in. The family was happy. I was happy. It was a very rare W for all around. So thanks to Big Cedar Lodge for having me.
Big Cedar Lodge is really your can, I feel like.
It was my can. To be honest, it was my can. But gentlemen, I can't wait to hear all about it. Tell me, was it all it was cracked up to be?
You know, it was. It is, and that goes in both ways, right? So you hear a lot of conversation I heard, having not been there before, was like, hey, this is kind of tired, and the topics are very tired that are there, but it's just like an amazing place to be with all the people that you want to be with. That's basically what I heard before going, and that was essentially completely true. Ashwinn and I were stumbling into kind of random panels, and like we just had these shocked looks on our faces. We heard these people babble complete nonsense in a way that was like, it was very shocking to operational folks. But then on the other side, like incredible networking, incredible place, incredible to see how people are positioning themselves and driving a lot of business for their advertiser, like as advertisers, as agencies, et cetera.
So let's kind of like just set a little bit of context. So historically, Cannes Lion has been a big week, and it's an award festival historically. So for advertising and marketing agencies, they would submit work to Cannes Lion, and then they win awards. And if you win awards in the ad agency world, it's more easy to get hired, it's more easy to get work, and so on. This year, and kind of recently, the awards almost seem like, you know, the stepchild of the whole affair. Like, people don't even know really when the award ceremonies are, if people are attending them, how you go and see them. And what you actually see there is on this beach in the French Riviera, the entire beachfront, probably for a quarter of a mile or half a mile, is these 20, 30,000 square foot structures by Pinterest, Meta, Snapchat, all of the big kind of like Publicis Group, IPG, these big agencies, and then tons of happy hours, parties, drinks, yachts, and all of this stuff. So it's become and increasingly is more of a relationship kind of networking, experience. There's all of these panels, and it's funny because Oren and I went to these panels. You said, hey, this stuff is like not really interesting. People are speaking in buzzwords, and I thought that was maybe just us. And then on the way home, I'm flying a direct flight back to JFK. So my entire flight is basically everyone who was there at Cannes Lion. And I was standing in line with someone who is the head of brand at a large agency, a large company. And we're talking about our experience, and she said, hey, I went to 4 or 5 of these panels, and they were the least useful thing I could possibly go to. And so she was tired by the buzzwords that she was saying, hey, they're just talking about AI, they're talking about influencer marketing, but they're talking about it in such broad strokes. And I thought that was really interesting, because sometimes I wonder if, maybe we're just too in the weeds on the operational side, and some of those panels and talks are actually helpful to people who work in branding and marketing in the industry. But it turns out that, hey, that's actually the least useful stuff. So when Oren and I were out there, we did a couple of panels, and our MO was to go into these panels and give the most tactical advice possible. So say, hey, here's this point. So if we say something like, your brand guidelines aren't that important, or they don't matter the most in the world of, all of these channels when you're trying to build your brand, that's fine. And most CMOs would stop at a statement like that. But then we wanted to provide case studies. So we gave 3 or 4 case studies and went back and forth on it. And that's what I think is missing in so much of this conversation, especially the more senior that you get, is you're removed from the tactics of how to operationalize a lot of this stuff. And that's what people actually need. We all know influencer marketing matters. great, how do we do it? How do we do this in an effective way that's not just hiring, Kim Kardashian and paying her $2 million to post about your brand? That was some of our experience kind of on the talking side. But what I think is a really kind of interesting thing that I have seen kind of happening here is someone had this tweet that said, "Why are there so many influencers in Cannes? It feels like my entire feed of influencers and creators are there, and they're just out there having a good time." And that tweet got a lot of traction, which prompted me to then make a video kind of explaining why influencers are there. And I think as Oren and I were there, we were kind of we were in Cannes from two sides of the coin, right? Where we are there as influencers, creators with an agency for a particular reason, which I'll get into in a second. But we are also there we're kind of marketers and brand builders and work with companies on that side and kind of consult with them on that side. When you look at this space now, influencers are a media channel, right? They have distribution, they have this network, they have this audience, and dollars are flowing to them. So the traditional model was, hey, we have $1 trillion a year spent on advertising and marketing. That was in print, radio, out of home, a few of these kind of traditional legacy channels. And in order to get your ads or creative on those legacy channels, you go through those big ad agencies, right? You go hire publicists, Omnicom, WPP, and you put them on retainer for 20 million bucks a month. And then they run all of your ads on these platforms. That world has been shifting over the past 10 years. And it's taken about 10 years for the traditional legacy space to catch up, where they now realize, hey, spending $100,000 with Alex Earl obviously gets us more reach, more affinity, more distribution, more efficacy than running some of the same creative on kind of these traditional outlets. And so if we want to reach Alex Earl, sure, we have to talk to all the influencer marketing agencies, but we also got to talk to Alex Earl. She has to be there because she is the network, she's the creator, she's the producer, she's all of these things in one. So why wouldn't we have her voice both on panels? Why wouldn't we have her there as a presence sharing the experience? So kind of across the board in all of these spaces, we're seeing creators at a variety of sizes, right? All the way from as big as Alex Earl, Kai Cenat, down to all the way of like creators who have 40,000 followers, but are hyper niche in a certain space. So
Kai Cenat to Schwinnebago.
Yeah, but the most interesting thing about Kai Cenat being there is we had a friend, Eugene, who was seeing Kai Cenat speak, and he said there was maybe 70 people in the room for Kai
No,
for
no,
They have no
Kai
idea.
Cenat.
We were having this conversation. Even the other
No.
like streamer prom was happening, and I was like trying to have some conversation. Like no one has any idea about that world existing at all.
Bro, so okay, this is actually touches on one of my biggest observations when I look at all these panels for all these like marketing conferences and whatnot. Is like, is there anyone in the audience? Because there's so many panels. How there's not enough people to
Well, I think there is a
populate.
different expectation. Like I think in a lot of these places, if 20 people, it's like the kind of thing is like if you have 20 people at your panel, that's completely fine. The one we went to at Collins House, which is arguably one of the most prestigious ones you can like go to, is like cool. The room is the size to fit 20 people. Like the whole point is it's small conversations. But for the Kai one, for instance, it's built for more, and it wasn't like there was overflow of a flood of a line to be like, let's look at the new media. Like it was just like there was just some people passing by, right?
Yeah, I mean, I bring up your point a lot, Oren, which I think is such a good one in this age of virality, which is, yeah, at Con, you might have 20 decision makers who are high level decision makers, and that is a valuable enough audience. But I also know like anybody who's getting funded to fly to France and the French Riviera that's high enough in the organization probably believes themselves worthy enough to be on a panel and not maybe listening so much at a panel.
Okay, so here is, and I'm kind of working this out in my head as we're speaking, but you know how we talk about the difference between celebrity-led brands and creator-led brands, and why creator-led brands are often so much more efficacious than a traditional celebrity-led brand? And the kind of thing that we all agree on is that, hey, if you're the traditional celebrity, right? If you're Brad Pitt or Beyonce or Jennifer Lopez, you have star power of your name, image, and likeness, but you are not good at capturing attention on your own because you do not do that. You are just you are successful and well known as a byproduct of being an actor in a number of famous movies. And so when it comes to marketing and advertising your own products and ideas, you are going to get beat 10 out of 10 times by the creator who is making content every single day because they're so tapped into their audience. They're tapped into how to communicate with them. They're tapped into how to get their attention. And so there's celebrity and then creator. And so when I think about these panels, when CMOs talk, I liken them to that celebrity level where they they've risen the ranks of their organization, but that doesn't make them the most effective communicators of the ideas that they need to share. And oftentimes they're not even in the weeds enough. So then it's almost, hey, you rely on them trying to find some insight that's going to resonate with the audience, or the moderator being good enough to pull the insight from them versus, and this is not to toot our own horn, but when Oren and I gave a talk at Darkroom, we said, hey, we're going to say these 8 things. And each of the 8 things is going to start with a hook. It's going to start with this provocative hook, this declarative sentence. Then we're going to give 3 case studies. And we did that 8 times, and each 8 segment was like a 5-minute thing. And the way that we kind of talked was like, hey, what would this look like kind of as a video, right? We kind of reverse engineer this talk. And people are like, wow, that was super easy to follow. It was super actionable. And that's great versus
It's
us
because we make
going in there.
1,000 short form videos. And so having that expertise, it's funny. I remember this when I first started making videos and I was in sales meetings and I would be like, oh, I'm going to hook and I'm going to do like background exam. I would just follow a video format and it was like kind of smashing for me. And I'd never been like a super effective salesperson. And like, this is 100% the case. I feel it's so funny how much being a creator can improve it, but that's how you need to structure these panels. They have one topic. I don't ever in my life want to hear about one topic for 30 minutes, right? And what we did here, and I've done a similar thing at Shopify the week before, is like, here's 8 things and you're going to get 3 minutes. You're just going to give you as much fucking as the most important information as fast as you can because people can digest it. And if you aren't like that, guess what they do? They pick up their phone and they start looking at some other shit.
Yes. 1,000% yes. By the end of my time in the corporate world, I realized, so many people will read slides to people and whatnot, and your job is to like first entertain people. That's what's going to get their attention because otherwise they're typing on their laptop or they're scrolling on their phone. And then you can give them like very simple, clear takeaways or what you need them to know. And I do think doing short form, when you only have 60 seconds to get people's attention and give them tactical, actionable insights, it can be really helpful. Okay, so what was the most interesting thing for y'all that like stood out? Maybe that you didn't know about it, but you were like, oh, I'm on the ground now and I see this was very cool or stood out.
So a couple of things kind of stand out, and we talk social influencers, creators, the kind of new modern playbook of branding and marketing. And I was at a dinner with a big influencer marketing agency, and they were talking about how they were
On a yacht or no?
not on a yacht. That was a
Okay, so we were land
experience.
bound.
Yeah. We were land animals at this point. Different conversation on the yacht. So I was asking them what it looks like when they go pitch these CMOs and CEOs of really large kind of Fortune 500 organizations. And they said, hey, there is this one P&G equivalent in the pharma space that's based in Europe. Tons of very well-known products, brands, so on. And we are pitching them for our business. And when we pitch them, we are not allowed to use the term influence. They're an influencer marketing agency. We're not allowed to use the term influencer to the CEO and CMO because the CEO doesn't like the term. He just wants native content on these platforms. And
I respect it.
and so what's so interesting to me is we unpack that a little bit. So he's in his late 50s. He's not on these platforms. He doesn't even like believe in the whole thing, but the CMO has kind of been pushing him to hire an influencer marketing agency. And their whole thing is, hey, many of their brands have actually had semi-viral moments on TikTok that they are completely unaware of. They're completely unaware of the conversation and what's happening there. And so we're trying to bridge that gap for them, but they lack the vernacular and understanding and impact that it can have to be on these platforms. So we're having conversations with them as that you would be astounded that we're having in 2025. We're telling them, hey, yeah, you don't need to plan your content calendar for a year out. And it's not just static posts on your Instagram feed. She's like, that's the types of things that we're still saying to the CMOs and CEOs. So it's this kind of aha moment to me of, I think all the time we try to push social 201 and 301 and 401 concepts, like, or it'll be like, hey, you need a TV series for your account, you need to scale multiple social channels at once. And it's like, hey, that's if you have the basics down and like can execute on that really well. But so many of, especially these larger brands and businesses, are just like stuck in 2015. And so we still have to say the same thing to them. And that's probably why Gary Vee has had the same shtick for the past 15 years. And people are still like, oh, yeah, he's got a point, at this
Yeah.
stage.
Speaking of Gary Vee, Oren, you got to interview Gary Vee himself.
You did.
Did you have any big takeaways like Ashwin and chatting with people? Or
Yeah, I guess very, very similar. I don't know if there's any huge takeaways. It was very much like people are there and thirsty for knowledge and happy to connect with other people, but probably not really getting the knowledge part, which was just an interesting opportunity. And then one of the biggest things, I guess we'll talk about creators in a moment, maybe we just dive into it here, was this idea that I think all the brands and activations realized if they wanted anyone to pay any level of attention to what they're doing, they needed to bring a creator. So almost everyone did. Adrian Burr was there with Meta. Like I had a whole squad of people I know was there with Adobe. A bunch of agencies brought their own creators. Even with like Vayner and stuff when they're at their event, they had like Pookie was at the Vayner event. Like everyone was like being like, hey, let's bring these folks, much like we were there with Darkroom. And so I think that was interesting is like you could see probably I'd say 20% of the can layer had like adopted this principle that like we just need to include this and it's worth whatever cost, which is like fractional compared to their $1 million, $10 million build outs. And then plenty of them haven't and are all like, oh, this is why these guys are all getting this attention. I think it's going to be like quadruple that next year.
who was Eugene there with?
He was
with what's the name of it?
Tracksuit. And so
Yeah.
Tracksuit is a company, and I think I did a video with them. They measure the impact of kind of investment in brand and how it impacts your kind of like return on performance, or just like,
Yeah.
you do all these like out of home things. You do this like brand investment. What is the impact that it's actually having? And so they try to quantify that a little bit more. A couple of other things that I think stood out to me is we went to a couple of activations. We went to the Pinterest booth. We also went to the LinkedIn booth, and we got a little bit more of a behind the scenes take on what was happening there. We also got to observe what was happening. So at Pinterest, imagine this. It's on the beach. It's built directly on the beach. It's probably 20,000 square feet of these massive installations. I mean, we heard that Meta has a $40 million budget for that week to build their booth, bring their employees out there and do stuff. So they are spending tons and tons of money being there. So the Pinterest activation was really interesting. Number one, because it was packed, and you go to all of we spoke to one of the people who was kind of behind it, and he said, hey, our objective with Pinterest is to really resonate with Gen Z, because we've had this brand or kind of existential, crisis where we've been known for the Midwest elder millennial Gen X boomer mom. And we are very much trying to move out of that and broaden our horizon and be this place for Gen Z. So we want Gen Z to know that, hey, there's a lot of tooling and great things that they can find and like develop their identity and personality through Pinterest. And we want that to be reflected in our activation here. And so how they did that is they had all of these setups where you would create things. So they had these Altoid tins that you could customize with like all kinds of little tchotchkes on it. And listen, like I'm not Gen Z. I'm like a mid-market millennial. So I looked at that. I'm like, that's not that interesting. I don't want to do that. But you had like 40 girls in line waiting to do that. And every single one of, Pinterest like little activation booths, they had a Gen Z audience very eager and interested and waiting in line in the 95-degree heat to go make this thing. And so when I looked at their activation, I'm like, great. They had like a Gen Z representative helping them structure this whole thing and build it so that it resonated. It was not the product of a bunch of like 45-year-old guys talking about like, hey, how do we like resonate with the youth? They had that input, they had that voice from a younger audience. And so they did a great job. Contrast that to, we went to LinkedIn's suite. And again, LinkedIn's spending a lot of money for their suite and activation. And LinkedIn's whole MO right now is that they want professionals to create more content on LinkedIn, short form video content. And so they set up a kind of creator booth here. And they set up a creator booth, and then they did this partnership with Adobe. And then, it was kind of like kept getting more and more burdensome by committee, where you had to download the Adobe app and then you had to scan this QR code and then you had to sign up for an account. And then only then could you like create the video and all of this stuff. And then they had someone from Adobe there who would like guide you into creating content. And Oren and I are listening to this, right? Where both of us create content as professionals in like a kind of like B2B setting. So we're the audience and we think about it and we're like, yeah, you probably couldn't even get us in there to create a video. And like, what are the chances that this is set up in the right way where someone who has never made a video before can go through this experience and they walk out with a video that isn't completely cringe and horrible, that they then feel proud to go post on LinkedIn? And there was no one there. There was no one there. We were there for like 45 minutes, right? No one was kind of walking through. And some of these people are like, yeah, it's kind of missing the mark a little bit.
So the LinkedIn booth was in partnership with Adobe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So
it
they're
was,
trying
it
to.
was a very small. It was like a really small part of the area. They actually had like 3 or 4 content creation sections. Just one section of it then was like an Adobe one, and there was a few others. I actually went through and kind of looked at it. But either way, it was like empty, basically. Like the content creation sections, the learn how to make video sections, both the Adobe ones and the other ones, like no one was doing.
And so what my kind of takeaway on that is I was talking to Oren after this is, okay, if say we came in as they were designing this whole experience and they said, hey, you guys are creators, what do you think about this? We probably would have said like, hey, the friction is still too high and we need to reduce the friction to creation. So maybe this actually looks like Oren and I there doing a kind of man on the street style format where we have 4 or 5 prompts that we ask them about. We say, hey, are you a marketer? Are you a, designer? Are you a like TV ad like specialist? Okay, great. Here's like 4 or 5 like hot button topics. We're just going to tee you up with a question, or we're going to ask you to rank X, Y, and Z. So it's more of a response from them where they don't have to think as much about, hey, how do I script this thing for 60 seconds and then hook it right and get the right lighting, and then now I have this, amazing post. You're kind of like brought in. And so I think we were kind of brainstorming ways of, okay, here's how we would basically just reduce the friction so you get a higher opt-in rate for people to come in and do it and walk away feeling good with like whatever video asset they have.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw a take yesterday of this like person saying they think LinkedIn will be the #1 destination for creators like going forward. And I think both of these conversations align to me on an important like macro principle. The same reason that a CMO at Con can't actually deliver anything really interesting in a publicly traded company. And the same reason that I don't think LinkedIn will be the destination for creators. And the same reason I don't think a CMO is delivering like groundbreaking insights is because the fundamental nature of why people follow creators and think that they're interesting and on an expressive outlet like Instagram or TikTok is because there's no allegiance and there's no someone over your shoulder. There's no legal department for a creator, right? They're interesting because they're just sharing off the cuff ideas and insights. And because we'll happily sing the praises of one brand and roast one on the other. And when you're a CMO, you just can't do that, in a publicly traded company. And I think LinkedIn is the same way. Like you can't actually be really that authentic on LinkedIn because it's full of a bunch of like corporate fluff. And so therefore it's not an interesting platform to consume because you're consuming a bunch of like corporate ChatGPT garbage. Uh, but I think it has the potential, and I know they're pushing short form video, and ours have done pretty well there. I just don't think it'll ever be that place.
So this brings up an interesting point. I was having this conversation with someone about differences between TikTok and Instagram, where if you say, hey, both of them have gone to this FYP model, both of them are like heavily short form oriented, you still get wildly different experiences in terms of the interaction from a comment and engagement standpoint, where I can have videos.
Yeah.
And so as an example of what I mean here, I can have videos that have 1 million views on TikTok and 1 million views on Instagram. The one that has 1 million views on TikTok will have at least 1,000 comments, at least 1,000 comments.
Yep.
The one that has 1 million views on Instagram might have 200 comments, maybe even less. It'll have a lot of likes. It'll have a lot of shares. The shares will far outweigh the comments. This ties back to LinkedIn, and the ceiling of good content on LinkedIn is capped by virtue of it's a platform for like professional networking, as well as interactions,
Accountability.
how you
Yeah.
see things, right? So in LinkedIn, if you still worked at Nike, you could never really post a real take about Nike or any clients that you work with or anything in the industry because all of your professionals and peers are seeing your content. So you have to sanitize it down to like the most accessible generic bullshit.
Yes. It's ultimate accountability.
It's ultimate like corporate accountability, which kind of sucks. That's not like great accountability, but like, yeah, it
Agreed.
kind of sucks. And so that's why everyone's like saying the same shit. It's why most of its stuff is like ChatGPT. There's no one really ruffling feathers. Only people who say interesting stuff are like completely independent people, or like all the corporate bro, corporate Natalie type people who like make fun of this whole like kind of ecosystem. But the
I mean,
same thing.
I was gonna jump in because I just like as I've started doing spicier takes again on Instagram, where I like call out brands and stuff like that, and the response has been like it's interesting. The consumer response is amazing because the comment section goes nuts. People have a real conversation around it, and then the corporate response is like, whoa. Like, all right, didn't know we were, and I think people are so massively afraid for anyone to have an opinion. And that starts inside these orgs, right? Where like, you can't call out anything. You can't say anything is bad or anything is good. Everyone's so like, oh, well, I don't want to make a decision that ruffles the boat. And I think that's just permeated throughout advertising and marketing culture in a way that is like extremely detrimental. Because if you don't have a point of view and you can't be forced to justify your point of view, then you're not developing any conviction into the things that you're putting out there in the world. And with advertising, like that's like extremely necessary.
Yeah, I think that's I think it's a great point, and it's like times where I'd even when I talk about campaigns or ads or copy that just doesn't hit the mark, what I always try to do is like, hey, here's why I don't think it works, and then let me try to be instructive in how I would think about reshaping it. And so I'll even go so far as to like redesign like the billboard or rewrite some of the copy. And I think there it kind of softens the blow a little bit because ultimately, sure, there's like still people behind this, they're doing this stuff, but we need to talk about why it's maybe missing the mark and then how to think about making it better. But again, it's just like it's one perspective. And yeah, it's funny because it just like upsets people. And so it's like, hey, we can't just have this ecosystem where the only thing we say is like, oh, they did a good job, like pat on the back. Like that's how you end up with like what Con Lion is, which is just like a circle jerk of like ad agencies and industry execs patting one another on the back for ads that no one ever sees.
And so if I was to change this, if I was to your point, if we were to improve this versus just call it out, I would most of these panels I feel like should be like almost like a debate. Like I would much rather have here's side one,
Yeah.
side two. It would be way
Yeah.
more interesting. Hey, you spend $100 million on ads every year. You spend $100 million on ads every year, and you think that X is useless, and you think that X is the future, or whatever. Let's go. I think that'd be interesting. And then also,
Oh,
we
good.
should be taking from these viral formats the way it's like 20 liberals versus whatever. I don't know if you guys have seen those videos, like Jordan Peterson versus 20 Gen Z liberals, like in a room. Like let's go. Like one influencer versus 20 CMOs or whatever. Like I think like
Corporate exec.
setting up
Yeah.
the confrontation of this, I think would make this inherently more interesting. Because otherwise, everyone's just like, yeah, totally agree. More content, embrace AI, think about the influencer world, but make sure we keep our budgets where they are because we can't go too crazy.
The point of view, I think, is a real interesting take, Oren, and I think this is a common theme that's going on. I'm, as we know, I'm a fan of Manners, is this golf brand, and they have this new campaign with Reebok. They have a collaboration with Reebok, which is probably the coolest thing Reebok's done in forever. And it's this like burning of golf carts, destroying golf carts, and it's like, no thanks, I'll walk. And they have these great,
Fire.
it's like fire. It's so good. And it's a point of view. And I realize, I think this is, I've been trying to articulate my thesis on this, but it's so refreshing because golf, particularly, so few people have a point of view. But actually, Oren, I think you're right. On a larger point of view, a lot of people just don't have a point of view. And I watch this in corporate circles. You would sit there, somebody would present the creative, and everybody would kind of nod and smile. Nobody can be polite. They'll go, man, but this maybe, the worst thing you would hear is like well, have we thought about this or that? Everybody would nod and smile. The meeting would end, and you would go in the hallway, and people would be like, that is fucking trash. What are they doing? How could they have possibly thought that was going to be good? But nobody would say it in the room. And so, like, I would often, I got in trouble probably 5% of the time, but 95% of the time, it would be welcome to at least have some spirited debate. And it's just such an interesting place in social, Ashwin, to your point on like TikTok and Instagram. Man, I did a Caitlin Clark video last week. My God. I don't know I'll ever discuss Caitlin Clark in social again because it's such a Rorschach test for everybody's like political views and everything. But it does get people going. Like you need a point of view, and that will help you stand out and be distinct in this world. And actually, Bima brought it to me after we had this Caitlin Clark discussion. He was like, "Yeah, I see a lot of different takes and a lot of different viewpoints." So I think we're gonna do a debate format. He and I, and he was like you should invite a couple other people. And Oren, I think that's actually a great call, like panels, because I just keep thinking like we've been talking about panels for a couple of years now and how they need to be shaken up. I think debate panels would be much more interesting than everybody sit around and talk about how great influencer marketing is.
I think I was thinking about this on the way home. We're talking about, okay, well, if we go out there next year, what does it look like to do a panel that a lot of people are dying to go to? And I think on one hand, you have to be just such a huge personality that people are just like, will listen to anything you say and are just there to be there, which is like when Alex Earl was out in con, like all her entire following that was in con was there, but it wasn't necessarily like all the ad execs and like big people who should be listening who were there. So it's like, personality driven. And I don't even know that you can make a topic sound so compelling that it invites everyone in, because say you don't know who the personalities are, but the topic is still compelling. Well, it's like, hey, yeah, the topic sounds great, but like, I don't know if I like trust these people to like deliver on it, right? And you're still asking for my time to come out here. And then you also have this set up in the context of the south of France, which is like a preposterously beautiful place and a great time. And it's like, hey, do I want to spend the afternoon listening to these three panels where I may or may not get value, or do I just want to go out and drink and go on a yacht and then hang out with people who I never get to see? And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the latter case. So then I was thinking, okay, is there a way to actually make a panel that where if you get 150 RSVPs, maybe 100 of them are going to come to the event? And so I was thinking about this where, okay, if you could set up the RSVP structure in a way where, okay, maybe the topic is social content for brands and how to do social media better for brands. And in your RSVP, you have the brand actually submit their social profile and you say, hey, we're going to take 20 of the submissions and we're kind of like going to do a live consultation. So if you are Bose, we're going to like pull up Bose on the screen and we're going to say, hey, here's what they said. And they're kind of like intake. This is our take. Here are 3 things that we would do. Here's a video that performed really well for them. Here's a influencer campaign that performed really well for them. And then here's 3 follow-on things that we're going to do. I think that incentivizes participation much more, because you go in knowing like, hey, I've already committed something to this. There's a 75% likelihood that they're going to talk about my thing, which let's view everything as like people want to do things in their own self-interest. If I'm the CMO of Bose, I'm fucking going to that panel and I'm listening to whatever these guys have to say. So it's like my one take on, okay, if I were to structure this for next year, maybe this is how I think about it.
I like that.
I know we have a couple other kind of things that were happening or topics that were happening there. I think one of the interesting ones I want to hit on is like, is the content, where I feel like people care about the content if you have your existing audience and you're going and you're sharing your perspective. But like overall, it's just not really like a cultural moment. Like no one really gives a shit. Like the content isn't naturally resonant the way like some other cultural events are. Not I'm saying like CES content bangs every time or anything like that, but it is interesting to see how many people either don't know about it or just don't give a shit about it. It was a very interesting thing for me.
Yeah, that is interesting. I was not, Ashwin, like I did not actually see my feed full of canned people, to your point. Like, and feel like maybe in years past it has been. Maybe my algorithm has changed. But I guess, Oren, one of my big questions, I saw you sitting with Gary Vee. Any nuggets that you got from Gary Vee, the man himself?
Yeah, well, I mean,
any takeaways from being in person?
He was like particularly defiant that evening, or feeling himself a bit, because like, look, Vayner is like the new kid on the block, right? They're 14 years old, which is funny to be a new kid on the block, but they are at that level of competition, thousands of employees, hundreds of millions of dollars managed stuff, absolutely crushing in a way that like all these old agencies have, like, they are the person who competes at their level, who is brand new. And like all of these hot campaigns, whether it's Pine Sol or the Ulta stuff we were talking about, they're like behind a bunch of these social forward ones. And he was kind of like, yeah, like we did this off of like part of it's me the creator, part of it's me the businessman, but like this is just proof. I've been ranting about this shit for years and I was right about everything. And so I think that idea of conviction, because we think of this and we're like, are we only on this side of it? Are we just in that influencer? And there's Gary being like, no, that is actually 100% right. And I'm the only person with enough conviction who kept saying it out loud for the last 15 years and then engineered a billion-dollar business out of like the off of doing that. And I think that was really powerful to me to think about, because like we're always just second guessing this, because I don't know. I don't have enough ego to walk into there and be like, I'm smarter than every one of these CMOs and these ad agency people and these people that are making all this money. I know more and better because I make content on the internet. That intrinsically sounds crazy in the back of your head. You're like, of course I can't assume that. But then you're also like, yeah, but you're listening. You're like, yeah, I actually am. I'm actually right about all of this. And that's a hard little place to be. And it was very rewarding to hear someone like him be like, no, I've been like that for 15 fucking years. Like, and if you see the future, just realize that no one else does. And you need to have like singular conviction in the fact that your vision of the future is right. And I was like, fuck, you know?
And let me ask you, did you guys happen to chat? One of the things that I find interesting is like, Gary can't necessarily multiply 100 little Garys. And so how does he actually scale a business when he's
they created
the
that.
one...
I think they can basically. It's really it's basically like his principles come first inside of this business, right? Where it is like if you are a business coming to them to do a campaign, all the things that he yaps about, like you need to be making videos, you need to have your people do that, you know, that is like the core of it, and then they have minions to help them do that, and they've scaled to thousands of people. And I think the real benefit is the kind of he was describing as the real benefit of doing that with him is the people that he attracts to then do that are at a caliber unlike what the other people can attract. Because all the people that get it go, which agency I'm going to work for? I'm going to work for Vayner. And so I met their CMO, I met all these people that were in the middle of that. I was like, these people are all super impressive human beings who get it. And that is not what I got from a lot of the other, like the Collins folks are super nice. Some of the agencies had great people, but a lot of the folks are like, they don't get it. Like he magnetically attracts that, which I think is kind of particularly interesting. And then the campaigns and reflect that at the end of it. And still you're going to have some compromise of working with corporates, working with people that are there. And but it was very interesting to see. And look, the proof is in the pudding. One of the recommendations he had for Clayton and I interviewing him at the end was like, you need to eat your own dog food like 24/7. If you're telling people to do it, like you have to be doing it. And he was like, look at what we have like inside our events. Like when we went to the Vayner events, it was like influencers are there talking. It was a super content friendly. Like half of the footage from my video was because of how aesthetic their event was. Even the food was like, they had like a French chef wearing like weird fucking wings, making Mr. Potato Head fucking grilled cheeses in like an artful way. And it was like, they are eating that in every segment like of what they're doing. And that's why their event had fucking Meta Reality Labs there, had like these people that want to have that level of impression.
That's fascinating. When you mentioned like earlier that Gen Z was lining up for something, are we just talking about like the local kids who live in France? Because
so I was asking about that because I was saying, how are all of these like Gen Z people at Conline? Like passes cost $2,000, like houses cost $2,000 a night, like everything's so expensive. Who are these people? And what the guy from Pinterest was saying is a lot of ad schools and universities have programs that partner with Khan to get the next group. They have like scholarships for all of this stuff. So there's actually a amount of young
university students
people there
come in, like advertising majors and stuff. Got it. Okay. Well, yeah. And Oren, the event that you're talking about is that the one that had like the Hermes bag and
exactly. And that was actually hilarious. There's an AI company giving away Hermes scarves if you complete the demo and post about it. And you had all of these like older female CMOs like ruthlessly in this line for these bags, but then they have that flow of like, you have to do all this stuff to get this Hermes scarf, which is a huge thing. There's another place that had Ferragamo hats. Like that's how to get people at that level to be interested, right? That's a very clouded item. But then they're doing this post and they're deleting it 1 second later. Like it wasn't a fully thought through value chain, even though the demand was there. It was an interesting thing to think about.
Fascinating.
I was going to go back to this one point of like eating your own dog food. So we always think about visual and verbal hooks. And so brands that can do a thing and they can scale things up to a big size or a small size, like that's a great kind of like opening hook, right? And we always like talk about that type of thing. So as we're doing this activation for Darkroom and we have a presence out in Cannes, we're like, hey, let's do this. Let's do like a bingo board of, jargon that is said at Cannes and let's make this thing. And then the first place we start is like, oh, let's make these like little bingo sheet cards. So when people come to the event, it's just like something that they have in their hand. And then we like take a second for that. And we're like, no, like what do we always say? Like make the thing super big or make it super small. So then we like scale this up to like a 5 foot by 7 foot like big bingo card. And then we did this thing where we take it in front of the Carlton, which is like the epicenter of of Conline in the entire week. And then we made a video kind of like crossing the street with it, setting it up as a big prop. And we actually had a lot of people like stopping by, asking questions about it, taking photos of it. And then that turned into a nice reel that like performed really well. But it performs well because it's like, hey, they come in with this like preposterously oversized thing.
It was so good. And in fact, thank y'all very much, because this was so brilliant that it sparked me to do a Stitch video that actually did really well. Cause I was like, this is brilliant. I love a good pun. So the "can we not" is so great. So hats off on that. I love the music of this reel that y'all did, and I love this principle. So what did you ask people, like, hey, give one red tape, like you get one strip?
No, we were overhearing conversations, and we're just marking off like what we hear like as they happen in real time.
Oh, got it. Okay, yeah. I thought it'd be funny if you could hand a strip of tape to any marketer and say, like, which one would you like to strike off the record first that you never want to hear again? But this really touched a nerve with people, like in my comment. Like, this is one of the most shared videos I had like recently. People were reposting it to their stories, and there was a lot of chatter, and people were just so frustrated. And I think it reminded me of something that it just like drove me insane when I was early. I had to learn all these terms and everything. And I think it's important, if you want to make it in this world, you do have to like understand this crap. But true mastery of a subject allows you to speak simply about it, So you climb the mountain of like having to understand all the very technical terms. And on the way back down of understanding a concept truly is being able to explain it like a third grader. And
The hard. Okay, keep going.
no, that's my point. But it really strikes a nerve for people, and I hope that people can take away something there. Is like, yeah, you need to prove that you might know this crap, so you could like nod to it. But if you speak in plainer English, it will actually show that you have a more mastery of the subject versus trying to speak all the coded language.
Yeah, and I think that look, the hardest part about this is a lot of people need to describe these complex ideas that they're dealing with. So even like the idea of authentic, the idea of like AI driven, they exist for a reason. People need to describe some of these concepts that are happening. But then what happens is, instead of being used as a descriptor, they get used as a placeholder instead of describing a real idea, so that people that, especially that work for the kind of people that say that, end up being like, well, what does this really fucking mean? Or why does this really matter? Because people are just saying that instead of being like, well, really the KPI is like X, Y, and Z, or really do X. So basically it's just like replacement language. And I think this gets worse in this chat GPT era, where people don't actually have to write things anymore. It's like, put my outline in and put it out there. Is this ideas don't get fleshed out enough for the minion class, for lack of a better term, or like working people in marketing, to then be able to actually know what they're supposed to do and why. And I think that's a really big thing here. I do want to call
You're so right.
I love this. I loved doing this video. I've watched this. This video is amazing. Like, Ashwinn and I were editing this together, and it's funny. Like, this is an 11-second video. We shot for like an hour in like the pouring sweat to get. We had like 30 minutes of footage to go through to get this clip. Editing it and like putting it together and finding the narrative. I'm actually surprised we got this, because it was like almost random. Like, we have all this footage of us having these conversations. We're like stitching them to match the X's going up. We had like just enough shots and X's to make this video work. But this is the second time I've done like a viral event video attempt. Like, viral in our niche obviously isn't like 1 million views, but like we did the big bag at Canton Fair, and we're doing this here. And I'm trying to do this like everywhere we go, where I do just think like that idea of like, even for us to have to, we're going to go to this festival, we need to eat our own dog food, in the idea that like, cool, you want to have an impact or start a conversation. Like, how do you do that? You do that with spectacle that also has real value. Your point has resonance like within there, that positions you both as experts of the category you're in, and how to move information in the category you're in with the video. And so I couldn't be a bigger fan of this, and I'm stoked we got it out there.
So there's an important point that I want to pull out of that, and something that we talk about. And it's this idea of, if you're working in this like world of social content and just marketing period, having a creator of any kind in your team helping design campaigns, design content, even edit content, is extremely, extremely helpful for this particular reason. So let's talk about what happened there. So we had this concept, right? Oren and I were like the talent in the video. We take it down there, we shoot this thing, then we have all of this raw footage. We had professional videographers with us there for the entire week. Had it stopped there, had we had those videographers taken the video, chopped it up themselves, they're great at editing stuff, and then gave us this return clip where it's like us in front of the Carlton taking this thing, and then maybe it's just this 30-second clip of us like miscellaneously doing stuff, it have 0 views. It have like 500 to 1,000 views. Not interesting to watch. And maybe it just has some like cinematic music over it. It's not that interesting. But Oren and I sat next to each other for probably 15 minutes and we're like, this has to be the hook shot. We looked at 4 different hook shots. This has to be the hook shot. There has to be text that immediately compels you to get interested in this video. Then we're like, okay, what does the actual narrative here look like? Because it was all kind of out of order. And then we had to piece that together. So we edited it together in a way that we understand kind of like content and what is going to work here. And so I say that again, where, hey, when you're creating all of this content and you're trying to direct a social team, if there isn't someone fluent in understanding how this content needs to work, so much of it is going to miss. And if you're spending all of this money to go shoot this stuff, then it just kind of, it's unfortunate. It's a missed opportunity that you didn't have someone who is fluent in this like language and art to actually.
And it's just the idea. Like, what did it cost for Miguel to print the thing? $200?
Less.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. We had a van that had to bring it down that we already had. We had a videographer, but that easily could have just been a homie on an iPhone. I actually was like a little scared when we did do the pro footage. It like worked out for this, and Ashwin, thank you for calming me down about it. But like I was like, I wish it would look better if it was just candid. But yeah, like it could have been on an iPhone and done just as well. And literally was the idea. This is a like, let's say at the high side, a $1,500 production. Like.
Yes. I would love to compare the two actually on iPhone and this. I felt like it worked with your DSLR and the treatment because of Con, and like you wanted it to feel premium.
Exactly.
And
and that was Ashwin's point. And I was like, okay. Then we did the text that matched it and the music, and it's like, okay, this has a theme. Whereas I'm so inherently biased now, like, oh, people aren't going to resonate with it because it looks like a film. You know?
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, honestly, if there's one like tactical takeaway that I would sit here, so y'all sat down for 15 minutes. If you're a corporation or you're an agency and you're trying to make some short form content, like literally book 15 minutes with a creator, 30 minutes with a creator, even after you've shot it, like pay them for 1 hour to just give you some thoughts on like the 3 seconds, the amount of times, no names mentioned here, but the amount of effing times I've had to be in a god dang like review of edits for a social asset and just being like, no, that's not the hook. Here's the hook. I need you to restructure this. You have to do this, or the text has to be there, or you got to put captions on. Good God, just pay a creator for 15 minutes and they will help you so much. Please go.
We are announcing the launch of our new agency, social post-production as a service. I can't tell you how many times I have consulted with a brand where they've shown me some of their social assets, and we've done that in 15 minutes. I say, hey, chop this, turn off that corny music, and put this text overlay, and just instantly the video.
It was such a breath of fresh air to edit this with Ashwin, where it's like we had a 30-minute thing. I got CapCut open, and we're just like cutting it down, that clip, and he's just like, oh, and 2 people that get it, editing a video like that took literally maybe 20 minutes. And then being like, and it's going to murder is like, and then the difference between having to do that with like any of the fucking brands I've had to sit down with and do it is like actually shocking. Even the video editors, even I've sat down with editors. I'm like, no, what the fuck are you doing? And like,
I know
it's just not the case. Yeah,
I know. And these editors are talented. I've been doing this recently with a few of them. And I'm like, oh my God, my friend Paul Ripka, who totally gets it, who was in the paddock this weekend with Mercedes at the F1 event and just does amazing iPhone content. Like, he's just so good at it and just gets it. We were on this massive, I don't know, very expensive production recently, and you just see like they're just not built for that, and they're built for a different time and a different format, and they're great at that, but it is so nuanced. Anyway,
it's funny, even as we're producing stuff on the fly, we rented this Benz, we were shooting stuff in there, we were shooting stuff in darkroom, we did an awards show, and the videographers who we were with are super talented, they have great stuff with them, but we were telling them, hey, these next clips, like shoot this vertical and like start here and position it over here and frame it this way, because we're thinking about is like, what is the 60-second clip here? And they're like, oh, you don't want this horizontal? No, we do not want this horizontal.
All right, I got to pop off. I got to hop on a meeting here.
Yeah, I think that's all of our con rants anyway.
But yeah, please drop a follow, drop a like, sign up for the email newsletter, get the recap, all of the above.
Shout out Darkroom.
Shout out to
Darkroom for bringing us on this event. We need a great performance agency to help. They are wonderful.
And shout out Platform if you're trying to get in retail. We've got a retail episode dropping soon, which is amazing.
Dropping next week.
Next week. And last week, if you did not listen to Baseball Lifestyle 101, very relevant for all of this. Built a $150 million business off of ice cream shorts in the baseball space. It's absolutely amazing.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, y'all. Bye.